and 1. Welcome back. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are back and we're just breaking down the first fight at the beginning of fight season. We're talking about Josh Warrington versus Mauricio Lara, one of the biggest upsets in UK history.
It is a huge upset. It's a massive upset. We were kind of talking earlier about Warrington's career is fucking going to be jeopardized by this. This was a really serious beating to take with a lot of really bad injuries, including this broken jaw and pretty serious concussion. Lara is looking at some big fights after this. He should be a world champion. Hopefully he can get a world championship shot because his hooks look great. He had a lot of really good pressure. He threw in combination well. He looked absolutely great when Warrington did not. Even until the knockdown in the fourth, it was a tough fight.
I wanted to ask you about that because he didn't look good, actually. He looked like a 20-year-old prospect. He didn't look like a world champion just yet. It just so happened that he caught Josh Warrington at a bad time. How would you book this guy? If you were his manager, would you throw him in there against Navarrete, which I've heard talked about? Or would you maybe move him along a little bit slowly like they did Povetkin when he got his first big win?
I don't know that I agree that he looked – I agree he looked young, but I don't think he looked bad necessarily. I think he showed a lot of really good tools. Navarrete is the number one guy in the world. That might be too big a hill to climb right now, but man, this guy's going to be this guy's ranked in the top 10. He's got to take on somebody who's up here in the top 5 if he wants to move up, right? So we're talking about a top of the food chain kind of guy. I don't know. Who are you thinking?
I would go the Povetkin route. So when Povetkin became the number one contender to fight against Vladimir Klitschko, his promoters pumped the brakes really fast and said, we're not going to put you in there. We're going to make you fight everyone else. We're going to build you up and get you as ready as possible for Klitschko. The results were you still lost, but you didn't get fucked up. You ended up having a great career afterwards and making a ton of money. And he's still one of the top heavyweights in the world.
He just knocked out one.
Fast forward that to David Reed, who in 16 fights was a world champion, former Olympian, one of the best boxers of the late 90s and 2000s. And when he became number one contender, when he became champion, they immediately put him in there against Trinidad. And this got his fucking eye retina detached from fighting against Trinidad way too early. I've seen it so many times where a guy gets a big win and they throw him in there. I'll go Povetkin. Hey, give him 3 years to build up. Give him 4 years to build up. He already has a name from beating Warrington. Let him earn his money and become better, because I feel if you put him in there against like an Oscar Valdez or one of these big names in the lower weight classes, I see him as a huge underdog. I see him getting messed up.
Somebody who's doing that successfully right now might be like a Munguia.
Munguia would prove me wrong. Yes, Munguia would totally be proving me wrong at this point.
No, Munguia, he got the big win, but he's kind of been can crushing for recent years.
It hasn't been cans, though, because he still beat Liam Smith, who's, again, a big contender in that weight class.
In the UK.
In the UK. He might be fighting Tim Tszyu now that Tim Tszyu, his big shot of fighting against Patrick Teixeira is gone. Do you want to jump into that fight?
Castaño versus Teixeira?
Castaño versus Teixeira. It was a big fight politically in boxing. So you had the PBC with Brian Castaño. You had ESPN with Patrick Teixeira. If Teixeira were to win, he was going to fight against Tim Tszyu or Dennis Hogan. But Tim Tszyu next in a big fight in Australia on ESPN. On the other hand, you had Brian Castaño, the man who twice defeated Errol Spence Jr. in the amateurs, who beat Derevchenko in the amateurs, who was a phenomenal amateur and technically beat Erislandy Lara, even though the scorecards didn't say it. If he's to win, he fights Jermell Charlo, and the winner becomes the first undisputed champion that PBC has had since they've been a promotional company.
I don't really pay attention to any of the politics stuff. The fight was really cool. The fight was great with Castaño showing a lot of great. It's great. It's fantastic. I'm excited for his next fight. I hope they sign the checks real good. That's what I hope for the promotional company. I hope when it comes time to sign that check, their hand is not cramping or broken in any way, and that's the best they can do. But for Castano, this is a really big deal. This is a meal ticket fight for him. This is a fight where he's fighting to be able to not just get a big win and a paycheck here, but to get a paycheck that's even bigger down the road. And he has things that will make a fight with Charlo interesting, very interesting. I'm just not sure. When I think about that fight, I don't think of it as 50-50 as some people seem to. I think Charlo is going to take that for sure, right? This is a rough road to hoe for him. It's a rough hoe to road. But man, great night for him, and he looked great throughout the event.
It's gonna. I mean, it's gonna produce a lot of big paydays in the future. I don't see him being Charlo, and literally, this is the fight that Charlo's waiting for because he's moving up. They're playing musical chairs, so Charlo is getting too big for the weight class. Spence is getting too big for his weight class, and Jermall Charlo, the older brother, or by like a minute, but the bigger brother is trying to move up to 168 to fight Canelo.
The larger brother.
The larger brother. So they're going to play musical chairs. We're eventually going to see if Charlo is to unify, he's going to move up to 160. Spence is going to move up to 154. And then we're going to see Jermall move up to 168. So this is a big fight, but Castaño could be the spoiler. If he were to upset him and beat Jermell Charlo, and then we got Spence coming in, and Spence has already lost to him twice in the amateurs, that's a huge promotion. You beat your training partner, and I beat you twice in the amateurs. You have never beaten me in a boxing ring. He's got an opportunity to make a lot of money.
It would be real like Sakuraba Gracie Hunter stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But Castaño, he's obviously proved that he has great skill. Let's see that fight coming forward. Teixeira was just not able to get it done. That's how it is.
Jojo Diaz, this is a fight. So the other fight.
I told you there's going to be a fight. I would like credit for that, sir.
Woo, yes. Oh, my God. So I kind of think a little bit of it had to do with also Jojo Diaz's bullshit going outside of his ring, outside of the ring. Number one, he didn't make weight.
By a margin.
What was that?
By a margin. By like a more than like boxers ever usually do, right?
Yeah, he complained about the fact that since this is his first fight post-COVID, he didn't have a lot of the things he's used to, like a sauna and like a regular training camp and just having the accessibility that he needed to. And there was a point where he couldn't cut any more weight, where he felt like he physically was going to be harmed and he wouldn't have the career that he's going to have. So he just chose not to make the weight. What do you think about that as someone who makes weight regularly?
So I don't get paid a lot of money to do it. So there is a difference. I do it because I'm a psychopath. I get paid sometimes. No, he's made the weight. He's already moved up from 126. To me, I wonder if Jojo was moving up with the intention of having an advantage and recognizing that he could use a couple extra pounds in there to really fight through. And he came into camp way too fucking heavy. Do you know what he came into camp at, Jesse?
No.
172. People who fight at 130 shouldn't come into camp at 172 because then it's not a boxing camp. It's a fat camp. And that's what it ended up being for Jojo Diaz. And when your camp is a fat camp, you almost always fail, to be honest. It usually goes really, really poorly. And he ended up having
around this height. So I'm going to tell you this. I have never been 172 unless I've actively tried to be 172. So I can't imagine someone coming into a fight where, what is he, 130?
He's supposed to weigh in for the fight at 130. He fought fight night, probably 140. He weighed in the next day like a little under 140.
So I can't imagine coming in at 170, trying to cut 40 pounds.
Well, I can tell you, when you're an athlete who has to make weight, you're always kind of aware how far away you are from it. You know what I mean? If you have to make 130 at some point, you step on that scale at 155 and you're like, that's 25 pounds I eventually got to lose.
Yeah.
Step on that scale at 160, you're like, man, eventually 30 pounds is going to have to come off of me in some fashion, right? You get to 172, you're like, 42 pounds has to get sliced off my fat ass like a fucking turkey at Thanksgiving. Man, it sucks. It's an unprofessionalism issue. I don't think it was ultimately him like, I couldn't get a fight. Bro, you were 172.
He's also been battling and very vocal in the media, specifically on ESPN, or sorry, was it The Zone, where he talked about the promotional issues he's having. He's having a lot of like internal problems with his camp, and he almost lost his belt by refusing to rematch Tevin Farmer.
Tevin was talking shit on Twitter too. He was like, "Damn, homie, I would have paid for a sauna for you to make weight just to get that title fight again." Yeah, Tevin was going in on him a little bit. Man, ultimately, I think that, JoJo's been having problems, but you only get to have those problems and you only get to be a diva when it's going well, right? If you come in, you don't make weight, you can talk about anybody else. JoJo is the one who didn't make weight. For his camp should have helped him. His trainer should have been there helping him make weight. JoJo didn't weigh what JoJo said he would weigh. And then you come in, you have a draw against a guy that you were the betting favorite against. You just lost negotiating power, homie. You know what I mean? Because if he had made weight, he'd still be champion, let alone for the, you can throw out the draw. The belt goes home with him.
If he had lost, this would have significantly impacted his career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, Rakhimov ended up looking really good and really made it a fight. I was surprised JoJo had that pop later in the fight. And I think that him not making weight and him not having to suffer out the last like 3.5 pounds, 3.6 pounds had something to do with that. I think it affected the fight. That's a fucking mental struggle. Because it's not 3.5 pounds. It's the last 3.5 pounds. After you've gone through, 39 others. Holy shit. So what do you think of the decision? What do you think ultimately of how it was scored? Did you have it a draw?
I've seen it all. I don't remember the round specifically, but I had JoJo Diaz actually winning by a round.
You know what's wild? All three judges ringside scored the fight. It was a split majority draw. All of the judges gave the last 2 rounds to Rakhimov, even though those were some of JoJo's best rounds.
Yeah, that's odd. I actually felt that he showed the heart of a champion in coming in and sweeping the last couple rounds. And I think that's kind of what put him over the top in my scorecard. Rakhimov did a phenomenal job.
You always have to make it some Mulan bullshit where it's like, man, I just thought he showed you just, the strategy of a warrior by really like getting some of those middle. It's always got to be like some like mythical, like, yeah, I thought he won more rounds. You can just say.
He didn't just win more rounds, but he showed that like he's not just some dude who's good. He's got something more internally, and I felt like that's what mattered when he. I mean, I still scored it numerically. I mean, it is boxing, but I thought that was a difference maker between the two. Is how do you close the show?
Ultimately, yes, because the last 2 rounds ended up mattering in this very close fight. But I feel like that's like judging that's emblematic of a judge saying like, because as you're going through, you can say whatever you want as a judge. JoJo missed weight. This is a really close fight. And like, if I give these last 2 to Rakhimov, he does get a draw. And I feel like there might have been some like, and we'll see what the other 2 people judge it. You know what I mean? I'm only one of 3. I can't even really control the thing. Versus, I feel like even the judge who ended up giving it to JoJo probably had JoJo ahead with a couple rounds left and was like, let me give the last 2 to Rakhimov. Just, make sure people know it's a real close fight. Some of that boxing bullshit that we always seem to go through.
Storyline purposes, I've always asked, because I'm always curious at the end of each fight, who should the winner fight next? This fight was a draw, and I would love to see a rematch. How do you
have
feel?
to. You have to. Absolutely have to. Man,
JoJo, but I also felt JoJo won, but he also didn't make weight. I mean, this is Benavidez versus
Figueiredo.
Figueiredo, yeah.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. They need to run this back. They need to have JoJo make the weight. JoJo can't move up to 35. JoJo is not big enough. He doesn't have the length for it. It would be a bad idea. His competition window is 130 and under. And if he can't make 130, man, he's going to be in a lot of trouble.
100%. Man, we had so much boxing. Richard Commey came back.
Richard Commey did come back. Richard Commey showed that he's still the man, homie.
He looked phenomenal. One of the cool things that I saw was who was there in his locker room? Who was there front row? Was the guy he gave the opportunity to, who is now the undisputed champion, Teofimo Lopez. What a class act to be there, the guy who gave you the shot, and you go ahead and put it forward and, give him a little bit of advice in the corner and like hang out with him and just show him love. Like, I thought that was really cool of Teofimo.
It's very cool. There's got to be some respect from Teofimo because Comey was the guy who was able to be like, yeah, I'll give the guy a shot. I'll give the guy a title shot. I will take this guy on, even though I know he's fucking crazy tough, much tougher than anybody realizes. Assuming
we thought it was 50-50. So did the odds makers.
Oh yeah. Super dangerous fight for a name at that level versus like if Richard Comey was to fight him like right now and they hadn't fought before, like, it'd be a much bigger deal. But ultimately, yeah, it was a nice sign of respect for sure.
One thing I will say is that a lot came out of this in terms of news about the weight class. So we got to find out that Lomachenko and Nakatani is being scheduled next. What do you think of that fight?
It's pretty good. It's all right. Good to see Loma back.
Javier Fortuna versus Ryan Garcia. He's mentioned Tank Davis. He's mentioned Manny Pacquiao, but we're probably going to get Javier Fortuna. And how I've always said on this podcast, Javier Fortuna is highly underrated. And I think that's a really close fight. How do you feel about that?
I think it's a really close fight. I think Javier Fortuna moves really well. And there's definitely some defensive liabilities in Garcia's head movement and footwork that we saw last time. It's crazy. You see him all the time when he's training. He always loves to put out the videos of the speed bag, right? Mm-hmm. The peanut bag or something. And like the things that work that, the hand speed, the combination work, like he's got that in spades, right? He's got that for days. Mm-hmm. But then the things that doesn't work, the head movement mostly and the footwork for sure, he lacks there a little bit. So it's funny how specifically tailored his skill set is to Instagram. He's almost perfect in that way. I love it.
I'm going to do a hot take. Javier Fortuna, at the same age of Ryan Garcia, may have not been ready for those opportunities. He doesn't get mentioned as one of the top 25 under 25 in boxing because he's 26.
Small problem.
I think that Fortuna is going to beat Garcia.
I don't disagree with that at all. Man, Campbell nearly got him out of there.
Fortuna's way better now than he was at 24 and 23 when he was getting those opportunities. And I think that that's going to play in a lot of people underestimating him because he's looked phenomenal quietly. So I'm going to be very interested in that match. Devin Haney versus Linares is possibly next. That's the one that's most likely on DAZN.
Tough fight for Haney, but man, they're always ready to take over, right? That is a great fight for Devin Haney to get over to the next level.
I think that's a signature fight. I've said this on this podcast. He needs one more fight to be able to call the big names. A sensational victory over Linares, the guy who dominated the division before these young guys came in. I think that's a massive fight for him.
I think Linares is a big dog. To me, this is not him getting a signature win. This is him skipping a signature win if you think he still needs one and going and fighting a big dog. Linares is a fucking tough motherfucker.
And lastly, the last one of the four kings of this weight class, we have Davis, who is still rumored to be having this fight with Gary Russell Jr. as soon as they lift COVID restrictions in the DC metro area, making a beltweight battle. I think that's a phenomenal fight. I think that's a fight that most people aren't putting a lot of respect on.
It's a really good fight. I feel like people feel like there's a big size disparity, even though there's kind of really not. Because I feel like people feel like Tank is bigger than he is. Tank isn't that big. He just hits like he is. The question is, when are they going to lift those restrictions? You know what I mean? They'll end up throwing it in some fucking some VA in Northern Virginia, I'm sure, in like March.
Yeah.
You'll love it. You'll love to see it. Great. Fantastic. Sounds like a great fight. Sign me up.
Any fight news for this week?
Off the top of my head, no. I didn't know to prepare any.
All right. Let's jump ahead to this week that is. We have a phenomenal weekend. We have a lot of great boxing, a lot of great MMA. Which do you want to start with? You want to start with the MMA card, or do you want to start with the boxing cards?
How many boxing cards are we talking?
Let's see. So we have
Let's talk
Burchell Valdez. We have Broner, with the undercard being Walling versus Brazil. And then we have Josh Kelly versus David Avanesian on DAZN.
Let's talk boxing.
Okay. Well, let's start with Burchell versus Valdez, which I think is probably the biggest fight of the weekend. This is the fight that's been brewing since they were teenagers. They happen to be neighbors, and they happen to be two of the best in all of Mexico. So Valdez competed in international tournaments representing Mexico. Burchell was local. He was more national level, and he was dominating the national tournaments. Burchell always felt, because he was a soccer player who decided to get into boxing, he was always politically and just kind of like red taped from fighting Valdez, but he always felt he was better. Valdez was always the boxer who they've invested in a lot. He was the one who won all these tournaments, and he made such a name for himself. He was a big investment for Mexico. Turning pro, same thing. Valdez got to train with Canelo. He got the Reynosos. He got the big top-ranked contract. Burchell had to work his way the hard way. So to him, even though he's the champion coming into this fight, he's been thinking about this fight since he was 13. How do you see this fight?
Well, that could play both ways, right? That could play to your benefit, or that could play against you. Having said that, it's not like Burchell has things left to prove in terms of being at the elite level or being a champion or needing to prove anything skill-wise. So it's difficult to know how all that's going to play with him. Having said that, he has been on an incredible run in his career, knocking people out. He has held a ton of power. He has held a ton of combination work. He's been killing people. He's been killing people, Jesse, in a way that I haven't seen Valdez doing. Valdez, it's a little bit more accumulation. You can see, obviously, there is it doesn't surprise me when you say he has the strong amateur record or amateur background. I could see that. How are you feeling about the fight when we close the ropes?
I understand the buildup to this. I understand how he feels about this. But as professionals, Burchell is the favorite. Burchell has the better resume. Burchell has beat the better people. So I'm favoring Burchell in this. And I feel like, in a weird way, this kind of rivalry that's happened for so long, it's almost like De La Hoya versus Vargas. It's like this long-standing rivalry. It'll be interesting to see if Burchell were to win this fight, will it be as hungry? Because this is the fight that he's been building up for this whole time.
He's making a lot of money to not be hungry anymore. I don't know if this is his final boss. I haven't heard anything from him that would let me know that. But this guy's 40 fights deep in his career. It's not like he's been getting ready for only one night. His entire life. This isn't high school prom, and I got to win this dance off. Burchell, I would expect to win this fight. But it's almost the kind of situation where I feel like now Valdez almost wishes he had the experience with Burchell, so that he could kind of game plan around it a little bit more. And he had felt that before. Because especially the guy with power, you want to feel it, if you can feel it beforehand and kind of know what you're dealing with, it can be a little bit better than just walking in and finding out randomly, can you deal with this person or not?
So being that they grew up actually in a similar area, people who have trained with him will say Valdez has the better work ethic. He's the harder worker. He's a more disciplined person. His diet is cleaner. He puts more time in the gym in. But Burchell, being someone who was a high-level soccer player in a soccer-addicted country, and he's also a high-level boxer in a place that has a lot of passion.
Soccer-addicted sounds like a dog whistle somehow.
What was that?
Soccer-addicted sounds like a dog whistle. That sounds like something that's a
soccer-obsessed nation in a boxing-obsessed nation. Being the fact that he's been an athlete at that level where he's been able to excel in both sports that the country is well known for, he's the better athlete coming into this fight, and he has more power coming into this fight. So it's going to be interesting to see Valdez be the boxer, and then you got the puncher being Burchell. Sometimes that doesn't actually work out. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But we've seen in the past when we think that that's the dynamic, and then we see like a Tommy Hearns versus Ray Leonard situation where those roles get reversed. It's going to be fascinating to see if work ethic can outdo natural athleticism. But man, I got to put my money on Burchell on this fight.
I would agree. I expect Burchell to win. I expect Burchell to hold on to his number one status.
A lot of good questions going into this fight. A lot of fantastic questions. No bigger question about where their career is going to go than the next one. We have Adrian Broner returning up against some dude.
It is very some dude, right? It's a guy who he's one of those guys who has like technically like a 15 years of experience because he had like one fight, 15 years ago. And then he took like a 7-year gap or something, literally. But the question is always going to be, where's Broner? You know what I mean? If Broner comes back and he looks relatively close to where he should be, then he'll have no problem. He'll be able to use his speed, use his dynamicism, use his counter ability to win the fight pretty handily. If his lifestyle is taking a toll, then he's fucked. He's utterly fucked. And he could get taken out of there by somebody who is much less heralded and accomplished.
I think this could be a very Josh Warrington situation. Let's break down who Adrian Broner has been since quarantine. He is, I think, like $5 million in debt. He has no money. He's back in the hood. He was really fat just a couple of months ago, and he shed a whole bunch of weight.
Factual. What weight class do you think he got up to? Do you think he got up to heavyweight technically?
Technically, he was huge. He was over 180.
He looked like Rick Ross. He looked huge. He's a big boy.
And he's in his 30s now. The 30s isn't old, but when you've been abusing your body the way Adrian Broner has, he's put a lot of miles in that 30-year-old body of his.
Absolutely. I mean, Adrian, AB, about billions. We are about to find out what he has left after 30. And I predict this is not the start of some resurrection tour where Adrian Broner marches his way back up to the top. Guys tend not to find their discipline at age 31. You know what I mean? As professional fighters, at least. Hopefully he's got good people in his camp. Hopefully this is the kind of thing that can really take care of him. But this is a little bit of almost like a freak show in a way, right? This is almost sideshow-ish.
I say that it wouldn't be that bad of an idea to put a little money in the other guy. I'm sure the odds are very skewed. Some guy you've never heard of, kind of like Mauricio Lara, versus a Josh Warrington type guy. The only difference is, let's add drug abuse, alcohol abuse, possible mental health issues, legal issues, and now he's broke.
And
so
fat.
How does the camp look like when you don't have money?
And fat.
And fat. Yeah, because I mean, here's the thing. I'm not fat shaming, but the fact is, when you have these crazy shifts in your weight, it affects your performance.
Absolutely affects your performance. You ask any professional, what do you always hear about the most disciplined guys? They keep their weight in check all the time.
100%.
We just talked about it with Jojo Diaz. He got up to 172 and his fucking whole camp, he's trying to make weight, and he ends up failing and losing his world title before he ever steps in the ring. Man, it's a real thing.
Every mistake we've talked about in this whole podcast
is one person, right? Man, we just need somebody who's a broke ass. We need to talk about fucking Takeshi 6ix9ine so we could get like a fucking snitch as well. Oh boy.
The undercard is going to be fun though. I really like to see Otto Wallin. We mentioned him earlier in the podcast. He had a great performance against Tyson Fury, who went off to become the world champion. And now Otto Wallin has been climbing the ranks at heavyweight. And man, I don't know if he was always good and we just didn't know who he was, or if that motivated him to climb the ranks. But he's climbing the ranks against a former top contender, Dominic Breazeale. How do you see this fight?
Otto Wallin is somebody who, like I mentioned, in that first fight, he went all 12 rounds. He gave Fury a lot of unexpected difficulty. There was a cut in the fight that he caused. I mean, there was nothing, there was nothing dirty about it until he tried to thumb the cut open a little bit more to cause the stoppage. That was
eyes. Sorry, that was my Timothy Bradley.
Just don't flex again. But Otto showed a lot of talent and a lot of purpose in that fight, and that doesn't surprise me that people would come to him after and kind of see some potential there. We saw the potential. Why wouldn't a trainer see this potential? And so I don't know what's changed in his life, but he's continued to climb. He's continued to show that he's really got something to put together. He's a big boy. He throws punches well. He knows how to box. He has boxing IQ. And he's fighting Dominic Breazeale, who we haven't seen since he became a near viral KO at the hands of Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
That's a long time to take off. Like, I know we usually say it's a good thing to take off sometime, but that's a long time to take off.
I always remember Brendan Schaub describing being ringside for that fight. He was there sitting right next to the family of Dominic Breazeale, who were all wearing shirts saying new world champion, and they were all cheering, and he was just sitting there thinking like, oh, they don't know. His kids were there. His family was there. They were all having the best time because they were convinced Breazeale was going to win. And the whole time he's thinking like, he's about to become like an Instagram video, right? And then exactly what he felt happened. And he just saw like the saddest sight sitting right next to him after that happened. Dominic Breazeale, rightfully so, took a long time off after that.
This has been Joe and Jesse Describe Other Podcasts.
So rightfully so, Dominic Breazeale took a long time off after getting completely annihilated by Deontay
Wilder.
Deontay Wilder, yes. And he's here to hopefully do a resurrection against Otto Wallin. But I think his own promoter is believing that this is a way to get Wallin over on your name. And
which is such a mean thing to do during Black History Month. Why did it have to be February?
So I got Otto winning this fight. He's going to advance. I feel like Breazeale's kind of like, he was always kind of like just the guy that you make your name off of. And I think this is Wallin's next step forward.
He's at the gate, right?
Yeah.
He's at the gate. Somebody needs to keep the gate. He has to pass the test. I believe he will do so. And I believe that he picks up a late stoppage against Breazeale.
I can definitely see that.
I could see it something to the effect of like Breazeale just like not even coming back out after like the 9th or something. You know what I mean? Just we'll see. Breazeale's very tough. He did go 12 with Deontay, so that is definitely something. This is definitely somebody who's had some durability in the past.
I'm Breazeale. This is a couple of years removed from that. You've lost to the champions. You fought those wars. You've taken this huge layoff after getting like annihilated. Like, I don't know if this is going to be like prime Breazeale. I feel like we're going to get some spoiled goods in this fight. That's just my take.
Could be.
Lastly, we have a step-up fight. Josh Kelly, the top welterweight and also big rival to Conor Benn, is finally taking his European-level step-up fight against David Avanesyan, who's fought at the world level before. This is his first step-up fight. There's a lot of hype on Josh Kelly. And actually, before he actually leaves the European level, there's a big talk about having him and Conor Benn fight if he wins this fight for the European title. How do you see this fight?
That's an interesting fight. This is really early for Josh Kelly. Was he an Olympian or something?
He had a very good amateur career.
Yeah, because he's only 10-0, and I haven't really had a chance to get eyes on this kid yet. Avanesyan has shown himself, he's had fine performances against, previous champions. He had a fine fight against Lamont Peterson. He's a little bit past the prime, and he's not what he once was, is by all indications. So definitely a step up, definitely a little bit of danger I'm going to be watching, but man, I'm a little surprised. This is a really early fight for Josh Kelly to be getting somebody as tough as Avanesyan, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they're moving him and Conor Benn pretty quickly, and I want to see that collision course, and I love the fact that UK does this because we had an opportunity to see this between Andrade and Charlo, and we didn't. We had an opportunity to see this between Juanma Lopez and Yuriorkis Gamboa, and we didn't. For whatever reason, the U.S., when they see these opportunities happen, they don't do it, and then we never get it. Yeah. I love the fact that we got to see Dillian White versus Joshua, that we got to see Amir
Khan. Who are you thinking about?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the two heavyweights we saw not too long ago.
Oh, homeboy. Dubois and Joe Joyce.
Dubois, Joe Joyce. we get to see them at the international level before they actually expand. So DeGale versus Groves.
It's very Hunger Games, right?
Because you get to see the fights, young guys get to make money, and then whoever goes off, it's still so early in their career, it doesn't affect them if they lose.
It's not a killer, certainly, like it could be at certain points. But it does end up having this Hunger Games effect of like there can only be one. You know what I mean? It's like a real Highlander type of shit. Man, it sounds great. I'm really excited. That sounds like a good fight. Conor Benn impressed me last time, but I still want to see a little bit more of him. And, building up contenders and having them fight each other is a great way to start getting stuff over. There's a lot of really good fights this weekend. Robert Easter is fighting. Elvis Rodriguez is fighting. Homeboy Chudinov is fighting. There's a lot of really good fights.
Who's Rodriguez fighting?
Elvis Rodriguez is taking on Luis Alberto Veron.
Okay. I mean, that's
not bad. No, we don't need to break them down or nothing. There's nothing crazy going on here. But man, so, some guys. We got some guys. We got the meat.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fantastic weekend of fights. Anything else that you have for this weekend?
Well, there's a whole ass UFC card.
We didn't break down the UFC card. You're 100% right. My apologies. I got caught up in the boxing.
You got caught up in the boxing. No, the UFC is doing their annual Black History Month card. In the main event, Curtis Blades is taking on heavyweight knockout all-time leader Derek Lewis. Ooh. In a very this is a good-ass fight at heavyweight, to be honest. These are two top 5 guys. Curtis Blades has shown issues down the stretch with his cardio. He has shown himself to be a little hittable by Ngannou, although, I mean, fucking Ngannou. But the wrestling is good. The pace is good. The game planning is usually really good. Derek Lewis, maybe the game planning ain't so hot, but all this dude does is win fights and win by knockout. It takes somebody who's really, really elite to get over on Derek Lewis. And so I think that this is a fantastic fight. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What are you thinking about this fight?
Man, I always go for technical. And if you want to go ahead and see who's the most technical between the two, you obviously have to go Curtis Blades. But historically, Derek Lewis says, fuck your technique. He doesn't get up in the most technical way from being on his back. He doesn't do anything specifically technical. The only thing that he does is throw those bombs. They used to talk about Dan Henderson having the H-bomb. Man, we got to have some kind of name for his knockout blow because that has put so many to sleep.
He's from Houston. Call him an H-bomb anyway. Who gives a shit?
There you go, the H-bomb.
He hits him with the BBC. That's Keith Lee's finisher, the Big Bang Collision, and I'm like, how are you getting away with this? Yeah, Derek Lewis, I think people don't respect how all-time good this guy really is, and he's beaten a very tough list of guys. He's one of the few guys who's ever beaten Ngannou, for example. If he wins this fight, you could really make an argument that he would beat Ngannou again, although it was a very, very, very boring fight the first time. Regardless, I think there is something to be said for, like what you said, usually we would pick the more technical guy, and I feel like there is going to be long stretches of this fight where Curtis Blades is going to be able to hold down Derek Lewis. The question is, in between that, is Derek going to be able to find his way to a shot? I go back and forth.
The only way I've seen Curtis Blades lose is the way that Derek Lewis wins fights.
You're not wrong. However, I am going to go Curtis Blades. I'm going to put my my bet on Curtis 5-round decision. Difficult decision.
I think this is his route to the title. If Stipe wins and he wins this fight, he makes the next shot. That's the next shot. You got to go Blades versus Stipe.
Well, apparently they're going to do John Jones. Apparently it's going to be
better. Give me that. I'll buy that.
Yeah, but whoever wins this fight is kind of in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah.
Man, I totally.
Card that you want to break down? It looks like a very light card.
It's a little bit of a light card. There's some fun stuff. Ketlen Vieira is taking on Yana Kunitskaya. Whoever wins that fight could be in line for a title eliminator. I would personally favor Ketlen Vieira. Any thoughts on that one? By the way, congratulations, Yana Kunitskaya just got engaged to Thiago Santos.
Okay, congratulations.
Dope. There are, Jesse, 2 rising heavyweight prospects on this card that I think we should pay some respect to, and that is Chris Daukaus and Tom Aspinall. They are fighting. Chris Daukaus is taking on Alexei Oleinik. And Tom Aspinall is taking on Andrei Arlovsky. These are both two really fast-handed strikers who bring a really solid boxing-centric game that I am really excited for. Their footwork is fluid. Their hands are fluid. They move well. These could be real guys. So I'm looking at Aspinall, who's taking on Andrei Arlovsky, and I'm looking at Chris Daukaus, who's taking on homeboy Oleinik, to see, can these be some new guys? Are we going to get some new heavyweight contenders? Because they're both, I think, 2-0 in the UFC with multiple knockouts, and they're looking fucking good.
I gotta look at Daukaus because he's fighting Oleinik, and Oleinik I feel like is still in his prime.
Bro, Daukaus is good. Daukaus can fight.
I think that's a tough ass fight.
It is a very tough fight. I don't disagree, but this is a really tough guy, and I'm excited to see him get the shot. Oleinik's old. Oleinik is not in his prime. Oleinik's like 50.
He's 50, but I feel like he's gotten a stride late in life. I can't say in 2000, excuse me. I mean, 1997, I can't say he was one of the top MMA fighters in the world, but I feel like now he's pretty up there in terms of the heavyweight division.
He's lost 3 of his last 5.
I mean,
he beat Maurice Green by armbar. Maurice Green is one of the most white belts in the UFC. And he beat Fabricio Verdum, who was being fresh off of like a forever layoff, by split decision.
And he lost to Derek Lewis, which, I mean, that fight was entertaining.
Okay. He got knocked out in the second. Jesse, what are we doing here?
I mean, you
forgot how much Oleinik has been losing.
You just beat the former world champion, Fabricio Verdum.
Not even in the division anymore.
And you beat Maurice Green. I mean, that's not the best fight, but whatever. You know what? It's good for a prospect. It's a good name.
Forgot how much he's been losing.
I did forget how much he was. He lost to Walt Harris, but he lost to Walt Harris before the tragedy.
Well, holy shit! Let's not. I haven't seen enough of Walt Harris to say the tragedy has like changed him or something. Even though, I mean, come on.
Fair, but I think it's gonna be a great fight. I'm anticipating to see the new blood in the division. Anything else you want to break down in this card?
I'm feeling all right. It's all right.
Sounds good. I can't wait to break it down and finding out who's going to be the next big star. Are we going to get a new big star at heavyweight? What is the boxing going to look like? And we have a phenomenal week coming up afterwards. So follow me, social media, Jay Rivas Comedy on Instagram, Jay Rivas on Facebook. How about yourself?
Follow me on Twitter at Joe@Fanatics. Follow me on Instagram at Morginho BJJ. And last thing before we go, Jay. Violent Bob Ross, who I know I brought up on this show and you didn't know who I was talking about, fights this weekend, Luis Pena. So feel free to look him up.
Let's look it up. Peace out from the block.